Well, welcome to the Dream Labs. Dr. Contrast Live here. Hope everybody's well, and I just want to get things moving here today. It'll be a bit of an abbreviated session for me today. I've got some things I have to take care of in about maybe about 30 to 45 minutes from now, but I want to make sure we take a chance or take the time here to kind of touch base and begin to pick up where we left off from yesterday's stream. And yesterday we worked on that GT40, the Ken Miles illustration piece for a client base. And that was a commission piece, and I just thought we'd take some time today to review some things on that and then go over it. And I want to show you the final piece, and also go into another little dimension here about some Q&A things that I've been really thinking about over the past few weeks since the beginning of the new year to kind of move into. So let me just begin with this, and we'll show you what the status was on this GT40. And I just want to spend a few moments just discussing this a little bit. It's a very interesting thing. Very proud to be a part of the process here. Here's the final informational piece that was done for this gentleman. Again, another condition from an individual that I thought was really interesting in terms of how it all came together. And what really was unique about it is we had a little bit of a conversation about how to attack it, what we wanted to work with. And as I said yesterday, the initial sketch I did was the Gulfstream official GT livery that ran at Le Mans, and it was a Gulfstream blue with the really strange looking cat's eyes, deep orange eyebrows over the headlamp pods. It the composition just didn't look muscular enough. It looked like it was more of a low level, eye level. 3/4 front illustration, but just the graphics didn't work out well, even with the composition of putting the logo down below and the track outline up on top. It just didn't have the right feel to it. So we switched gears and went to this composition, did a quick line drawing, and I got the approval from the client. He said, yeah, that looks much better. I agree. This is much more muscular. It's got a lot more content to it, and a very interesting process. And you can see some of the subtleties, for example, like where the fender kind of blisters out over the front wheels, captures the same feeling up on the far side. A lot more detail in terms of just being much more pure, and what I said yesterday, I think it's really true after seeing this, putting it together, much more athletic looking. So bringing some of the surface of the headlamp covers and detailing some of the intake pieces and so forth, and adding the very powerful rear quarter intakes, upper and lower, made a huge difference. So I think this is really a good session in terms of putting together the actual piece itself. Now, yesterday we just had the vehicle in place, so I went again this morning because of timing problems here and scheduling. I didn't want to get into a situation where we belabored the point here. But to get the job done, what I really wanted to do here was, if you notice, would added a little bit of the background with this is a pastel wash, which is really a great process to work with because you can lay down color, blend it in. And I use a Webro pad, for example, one of these guys. Let me show you what it looks like. It's WEBRL. It's really a neat thing. You lay down the actual pastel itself, and then begin to use that to dust in some of the surfaces. That's how some of these detail pieces are done. You lay a bit of a marker base to get the graphics down like we showed you yesterday. Then we come back in a little bit later with it and begin to add things like some of the softness of the pastel washes to create more of a supple surface work that really makes a huge difference in putting it makes it much more realistic. It's very much like an airbrush, but it's not. But it simulates that, and it's a very quick method. And the nice thing about it is too, when you lay down a pastel wash, which we'll show you in later streams here as we get moving, is you can actually come back in and erase it. These little hot spots. come back with an eraser and you can remove it, and the same thing here. You come back in and lay down a pastel wash, you brush it in, and you come back and pick up some of the surface work with the eraser. So it's a great, I said a long time ago when I started putting the stream together and doing this the Twitch program and getting into process work. In my opinion, for example, not that it matters that much, but from my point of view, there's one of the greatest drawing tools we never work with is an eraser. Most people, and again, I'm not being judgmental here, I want to be just very careful about how this is stated, but the eraser is a bit of a difficulty because we use that to change our mistakes or make adjustments and correct things. I don't know about you, but I've done workshops and working with individuals from a creative perspective and working with them, and they erase certain things. And what happens is a very subtle psychology takes place. You erase what you need to correct, for example. And the funny thing about it is you go back in and rework the piece and it's the same mistake. So it keeps recurring itself. 9 times out of 10, that's what begins to happen. So I think from my point of view, I've trained over the years, for example, we're going through school at CCS and down to GM design staff, where we actually use the eraser as a sketch tool, where you lay it in pastel washes or marker or blending pieces with like Flowmaster dyes and the like, and you could use a Webro pad such as this to kind of blend things in and give it much more of a soft, realistic airbrush quality to it. While I'm at it too, this guy comes out of the printing business. It's actually cleans presses after the inks are done or a certain run is completed. They use these pads that kind of clean out the blocks and go back in and retool for another pass. So it's a very interesting process. So there it is. There's the GT40, a Le Mans variation for a client and the commission piece, and I hope he's going to enjoy it as much as I had putting the time together. So that basically wraps that guy up, and we'll be doing more of this work, for example, in the next few weeks to come. In fact, I'm going to plan on spend some time today with you in the audience looking over certain things like what should we begin to work with here? What kind of subject matter would you like me to work with? Yeah, I love to do vehicle stuff, product work, and architecture, but I'd like to move into maybe some fine art stuff too as well. I mean, a little more watercolor work and do some landscape work. I mean, there's a lot of variation there that I want to really move into. But I would really appreciate if you have a moment, you can address some of the concerns you'd like to see done. For example, please feel free to drop me a note at my email address, and that is at jim@drcontrast.com. I would love to hear what you're thinking in terms of what to work with, what to really cover. Is it drawing based? Is it more theory based? Is it the conceptual work? Is it advanced vehicle thinking? You name it. I'd love to be able to be a part of that process to work with you and put some more variety into the pieces here. So here it is. There's a GT40, and I thought we'd do today, this is out of the way here, I wanted to let you know that I've been doing some transition work here, and let me just bring this up to speed here for a moment. Let's get this guy all set up here. And I brought this along here just for kind of fun to work with. I don't know if it's going to show it or not. Let's see if we can work that out here. A lot of reflective light coming into the when I lay it down there. Let's see what that does. Let's get this over to one side. Maybe that's a little bit better. I just want to let you see some things that I've been working with here in the past few weeks. Just wanted to be really seriously considering going into some transitions here, and transitions in the sense that I think it's time that I work, for example, the large Cintiq. I don't do an awful lot on it, but I work some digital pieces with it, and I just thought it'd be kind of neat to go back in and look at some pieces here, just to get the translation. This is just a raw sketch here. This is in Sketchbook Pro on the pad, and what I'm really bringing into conversation today is that at some point in time here in the next few weeks, I'm going to start doing some transition pieces. Here's a physical sketch, then a traditional media, like the GT40, for example, or other subject matter. And then, hey, how you doing, Doug? How's everything? Good to have you on board here, Doug. I just don't know if you saw this or not. Let me put this back for a second here. This is, I just saw you're on board here. This is the final piece on the GT40 I was working on yesterday. I just spent some time throughout the course of the morning. I've got a bit of a problem time-wise here today, so I'm trying to kind of squeeze some things in. And I went ahead, as you remember in yesterday's stream, I put all the information together on the vehicle and let it go with that. And then I came in this morning to the office in the studio and began to finish up due to my schedule concern here this afternoon. I want to go ahead and finish this thing up and discuss it in the opening comments of the stream here, adding some of the pastel washes, a little more graphic detail, and fine-tuning some of the highlight work and so forth in the graphics. So what do you think, Doug? Making sense? You buy this? I hope so, because a lot of time spent. I mean, it's really good to have you on board, Doug, and thank you for joining in here. Super. So once we've gotten that squared away with the GT40, I just spent a lot of time over the since the beginning of the year, actually, looking at, as I said just a few moments ago, I do an awful lot of digital research work, and I've been doing a lot of practice work and timing and so forth. And I do have a big Cintiq in my other office that I do work with. I'm going to bring that in here eventually and start to do some transference stuff here. For example, what I just brought up, Doug, was the fact that once we get this all squared away, I'm going to start moving into things, for example, like, let's do this just for a second. Once we get things organized here, I'm going to start looking at the possibility of coming in and saying, oh, here's some transference work. For example, we're going to do maybe a physical sketch of an architectural piece or a product design or a landscape of some sort, and then take it into the digital phenomenon and begin to use just some of the basic drawing tools to kind of give the crossover or the transfer a good solid look at how we're working with this thing. So these are done in, first, I've got 3 programs I'm working with now. The first one here, you'll see this is Sketchbook Pro for iPad. So I've been doing some exploratory work with line work and some airbrush systems and the like, and detailing and so forth. They're not spectacular. They're just practice sessions, and I really want to go back in and look at this stuff to take a look at how it all comes together. So I'm going to run them down the portfolio here. Let's see what happens. So we'll come back in, and let's go back to this, and we'll come back and go back to the gallery and line it all up here for us. So let's go back to gallery here. Save current sketch, good. No, there we are. So we're here, for example, there's one piece, and let me just there's the one we just showed you. I'm going down the line. Oops, I'm going to go back here. So we're going down the line. There's another series of studies here, for example, some vehicle elevations. Again, really rapid sketch in terms of just putting some line work down, getting very empathic, and just working again, practicing with the brush systems and how things are beginning to work into certain processes. Let's going to get this up a little bit here. There we are. So there we go. That's phase 2. Just looking at these guys and coming down the line and getting into some of this. Now here's another pass. What I've really noticed about the Apple Pencil is interesting. If you're on top of the stick and keep it vertical, you're okay, but then it gets really sharp, and you begin to lean the pencil, which is kind of a neat feature. You start to get a little bit of a fuzzy line or a little less definitive process to work with, and I think it's great to so I've been practicing that as well. With my Cintiq, I've got the typical the Wacom pen, which is a different feel altogether. You can kind of adjust to airbrush, line, blending and so forth. So I've gotten that down to a pretty good science, but this is an all new process with the pencil because the weights change a little bit. The more you tip the pencil, it changes and so forth. But again, just to stress today, these are nothing more than just practice studies in terms of what the process is going to do. Now, so there's a second pass. And coming in again, some little more, just some real quick gestures. And again, I want to be redundant here, but it's just really imperative for me to look at this new process, or this process I'm dealing with now, just from a practice point of view. What's manageable? How can I get a certain character of the lines down? How can I really begin to look at what these processes will do to make the transfer? For example, maybe next week I'll start a sketch on a typical media and transfer it on the iPad and kind of work with it there. But once the problem with this, we got the lighting. So see that overhead lighting is a bit of a problem. So anyway, again, gesture 2, just 3 or 4 to a page. These are very quick little thumbnail sketches. Again, to find out what this guy is doing, what this process does with that pen, for example, and bring you up to speed on where I am. So I'm not, here's another little cloudy sketch in terms of like a rear 3/4, a little bit of airbrush in the background. Again, working with line weights and changing tools and so forth. Very interesting. I mean, I'm intrigued by it. I love the process, but the odd thing for me is, and I'm sure some of you can relate to this, the work I do from a clientele base and consulting work, everybody wants to see physical, traditional art materials. There's very little need for digital stuff. They like the hands-on look. It's very different. For example, I was expecting to go the other way here, but I'll do this. I'll take my pad along sometimes to meetings. I'll go through some little quick digital sketches. I'm working with a group up in the northern part of the state now. We did some traditional pieces, some very big, large format landscape pieces. Next week I'm going back up and we're going to do maybe some digital variations on some of the themes I've established for them, working with input from the group to kind of just say, this is your idea, is this your idea? So it's much more immediate, which I love about this. So let's move along here. Here's another one. Again, just some real quick sketches. Nothing really, there's not a lot of client-based work here. This is me going back and looking at transferring what I do know, the little I do know, into the digital world and begin to practice what kind of character am I going to establish with this stuff, and how's it all coming together. So here's another one, a couple of little, again, just simple graphics. Looking at toning, how deep can you go, for example, with the brush systems? What's the line work begin to look like? All these little things that make a huge difference in putting sketches together, and that's what I'm really kind of focusing in on. So, and there's a couple of plan view sketches of some interdiction fighters for Star Citizen. I use some of this stuff. For example, I've done some traditional pen sketches, which you'll see in another program I'll bring up in a minute here. I'll go through some of this stuff, and I'll throw a bit of airbrush in it. Just kind of, these are real quick, what I refer to as conceptual, fast, quick strike studies, just to see what the content's going to look like. And once I get a nature or get the personality of the vehicle I want to develop, then I can turn it around and get into perspective studies and really put some really heat to this thing. So it's been great fun to see it all come together. And Doug, if you're still there, what do you think so far? Am I kind of passing the course a little bit here? It's been really fun. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not intimidated by it. But again, I don't do an awful lot of it because my client base really wants the traditional hands-on, more paper-related materials. What do you think, Doug? We'll just hold on here for a response if you've got one there, Chief. Hopefully, I'm glad the sound is good. So far, so good. Everything's working out really well. So here we are. Let me just move along here, doing the next one. Here's some, again, a little softer airbrush look. This is like a drone study, front end, a little elevation study, and then into a 3/4 perspective, and again, an elevation. Just really good, lucid studies to kind of put ideas down and see what's taking place from point to point. Then let's move along here. A little off-road vehicle, for example, a little sport coupe, two-place dirt tracker. Again, elevation and 3 or 3/4. Again, sorry again to be redundant, but this is what we're looking for. This whole idea of really exploring, looking at certain things, understanding what the content is, and for me especially, being very transparent and honest here, learning how to manipulate this pen. It's a whole different feel for me. It's not foreign, but there are certain things in tactics you have to watch about how you lean it, where your point is, and what I refer to as the articulation gesture going through a sketch. Really sensitive. So I'm learning how to put that into practice, so I do a very much more competent job putting it all together. Here's some little thumbnail sketches, again, just working with maybe about a number 4 or 5 gray elevation studies, and going picking one out and going a little bit of thumbnail sketch a little further, add a little bit of color to it, put some explosion into it. Again, just great exploration about yays and nays. Yeah, don't do this. Ooh, but that didn't work. Don't do that. So again, here's some really bold looking black and whites, kind of go more the nasty side where you actually use the value. For what it's worth, gang, I just love doing value studies. Value studies tell you a lot, and they tell a very complete, solid story. And the reason I love value studies is this: they become the footprint to going into color, where you see darks and lights. That follows your pattern into color, for example, the saturation and the hue levels that you work with when you put it all together. It's really cool. So the idea of putting all this together and going into some of the patterns to find out where the colors and where the values, lights and darks are, great in value, then you transfer it. It makes the task a lot more manageable when you go to color. So again, these are G12 elevation studies that we've been working on for the last year or so. And again, just a real quick gesture down here about what's the basic character of this line study doing. Really neat stuff. So that's that. Then I went to this, got a little bit of a 3/4 overhead, and again with the an elevation, real fast. This is about maybe a 10-minute sketch, 10 to 15-minute sketch, but it worked out pretty well. I mean, I'm still learning. A lot of lines are ragged in here because again, that pen is really fun. It does some strange things sometimes. I go, oops, I didn't want that look, but I'll get there. And again, the purpose of this stream today is to let you know what's coming. I want to make some transfer work here from from the traditional side into the digital side, and go back and forth here to kind of open some things up and change the subject matter, and look at very simple things like what is the value in it, what's discovered, and what's the value of an empathy sketch when you use a Conte crane. How do you recreate that into a digital phenomenon, for example, and then keep the same character and add to it? These are things that intrigue me immensely. I want to learn more about this, so that's why we're going this route. Here's some little ammunition studies, some artillery stuff, some weaponry, a couple of soldier studies on just rifle studies for Star Citizen, looking for certain themes and then going through the process here. And again, here's another little pistol study, again, digital, 3/4 rear, Again, notice as things move on here, I'm getting a little bit more confident with what I'm working with. Again, I'm learning what the tools do, what the brushes do, what the weights are, what the opacities are. All these things are kind of take into account that are not there when you do a regular or traditional piece of artwork. It's almost, and I want to say this very carefully, for me, traditional stuff, very automatic. I'm an old guy, and I've been doing it all my career, so it's been very, very forthright, and I've been very fortunate. I'm still learning the neat through things about it. Don't misunderstand. I'm learning a lot of neat stuff. But the digital phenomenon is something that intrigues me because, again, the character of the sketch is very similar, but the process by which you dictate it and illustrate it becomes extremely sensitive. So I want to do a really good job of making that transfer for the audience to make sure that we understand and we can kind of follow through with the skill set that you have, for example, Doug, and others who are watching or listening to the program or the streams. So let's go move on here. Just changing the background tone. Going to a little bit of an overhead three-quarter study, and again, into the munition system for a Star Citizen. This would be like a one-man weapon arsenal, for example. It could be a rifle, it could be a pistol, it could have a removable stem or else an articulating rear section on it that moves. Again, exploring some of the possibilities of what they do. And I think that's the intent of the Sketchbook Pro stuff. Let me just kind of switch gears here and get into another program. I'm going to show you what's, let's go to Procreate. Doing some neat stuff with Procreate. Here, for example, there's, again, just a line study. I'm switching gears and going to Procreate. These are just pen sketches. Procreate's a bit of a different animal. It's a little bit more sensitive, I think. When I'm Sketchbook Pro, I work with a lot. And I've also got Painter 12 on my large board in my other office, which I'll be bringing in here. Painter 12 is a lot more fluid, certainly a ton of stuff to work with. Procreate mimics it a little bit, but it's a very different character altogether. And I think getting used again to line weight, this is like a pencil study with a typical HB on the palette, pick through it and so forth and go from there. Again, real quick studies, some soldier studies on some fighters into perspective and back to an elevation again. Again, with this program, since it's Procreate, learning again, what's the character? Where are the limits? What are the boundaries? How far can you push certain things, and how far do you have to restrict it? How do you be very careful with it? So let's go back and see if I can get this back to the gallery here. Let's go back to gallery. Let's pick up this one. These are real quick little quick pencil sketches, for example, again, container studies. Just drawing through stuff and learning how to articulate the form, etc., and then putting a bit of line study, a little bit of character, and a little bit of tone work. Again, learning how to manipulate or understand the process to make sure we're doing the right thing. Let's go back to the gallery again. There's another little form study here. Just put a little more color into it, an elevation into a rear recorder. Again, very sensitive stuff. I mean, you really have to watch, for example, for me anyhow, where the weights are going to change. For example, getting some thin line working through here and making some things become much more manageable, and you can read them so that it's not muddying it up a little bit. And that's the one thing I've noticed about the digital phenomenon. What's nice about it, when you lay down an airbrush system, it doesn't muddy it up. You can go back and mix a little bit and still keep it under control. Neat stuff. So let's go back and look at some of these guys here. Here's some little inner city urban studies. Just some real fast gestures on some vehicle architecture. I kept it in the elevation because, again, this is what almost I think was one of the first sketches I did on Procreate. Just laying down line, getting the volumes down, and just doing some working with ellipses, for example, or circles. Very large, and then using the same thing, breaking it up a little bit, and again, little thumbnail study up on top. Just looking for character, presence, and stance. So all these things are really becoming monumentally interesting to me, and I want to just share with you today in the stream about what's coming. The more I work with it, the more comfortable I'm going to become. And obviously we'll start doing some transferring. For example, here's a traditional sketch into a real-time piece. Let's go back to the gallery here. The last one, I just worked on this one. This gets a little bit more, I use the term very loosely, a little more sophisticated. Again, it pushed a little bit further, begin to learn a few things about how to operate with the Procreate system here. And I started pushing the envelope a little further, and it wasn't bad at all. I really felt like, man, this is kind of neat. Let's see if we can get this kind of up on the screen of the camera a little bit to kind of show you. Oh, we're losing a little bit. Get that overhead light out of the way. There we are. Really interesting. So notice how crisp that was, because I kept the pen up on top, or the peak of the point itself. Then I kind of leaned back a little bit on this one. It got a little fuzzier. It's not a bad look. I can come back in and tighten it a little bit more, but I just want to see what the difference is between, again, to me, one of the things I really pay attention to in all the work that I do is just how the articulation process works. Hand gesture, position, where the control points are, where do you search certain things, and where do you begin to lean into certain things. And that changes the architecture of a study completely, as you well know, Doug and others who eventually are going to join us here. All sensitive stuff, so very cool. We move along here. I think we've gone through those two. Let's kind of drop this out a little bit, and we'll pick up, let's see, Procreate and Painter. I just got this Infinite Painter, and I'm still learning how to work with it a little bit here. So let's kind of go back and I'll show you. The first one I did was this, just learning the very ghostly kind of a sketch. Why ghostly? Because I was just, again, looking at, all right, what does a pencil do? What does the airbrush system do? What are the weights change when you actually work with this? With this program, it's just very simple articulations all the way through. Very ghostly, and these lines, you can't see it on the screen, they're very light line weights. I kept the surfaces. When I start a sketch on a digital platform, I always like to go, instead of going to like a black line or a really harsh line, like an ink pen or a ballpoint pen, I go back to a very, like an HB pencil. Or maybe a Prismacolor match, and go to a lighter value. I go around the rotation wheel, and I'll find like a real neat kind of a warm gray or cool gray 2 or 3, real light. I'll begin to generate the sketch, and I'll change the weight, and I'll change the texture as I go. And very interesting. So this was, again, a new program. I'm learning how to work with this guy, and just exploring. Notice again, some areas are very tight, some are very tight and very loose, and again, some are fuzzy. And same here. Look, I got up on top of the pencil here, saw some neat things happen, and went from there to there. Let's go back to home here. Let's go back to the second sketch. Where was this? And again, same process, elevation, turning into a front 3/4. Same exploratory material that I'm working with here. So it's all that to say that this is going to be a really interesting adventure for me, and I'm really looking forward to it. And the reason I want to really bring it up today is that I have been doing a little exploring over the last month or so since I purchased this guy, and I'm going to bring in my Cintiq and go back and forth for time to come. And I want to appeal to all of you out there in the audience, for example, who have been kind enough to join me from day to day, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. What kind of materials would you like to see me do? I'm not adept yet, really a solid digital guy, but I'm going to do some exploratory things and just kind of walk through some basic materials and see if we can't get some relationship down that'll really be a benefit to you. So I'm going to stop here for a moment here. Doug, any commentary at all? I hope you're still with us. Any input? What are you seeing? Where can I improve certain things? What do you think in terms of practice time? Appreciate your input if you're still there, Doug. Let me hold on for a minute here. Anything at all? Sorry, Doug, you still there? Hopefully. Let's go back to that Sketchbook Pro setup here, and we'll put this all together. Go back out of some of these systems. Let's go back to Sketchbook just for a minute here, and we'll roll back on this whole series of things. This is where I started, for example, on Sketchbook Pro, since I'm a little more familiar with the process that I've been dealing with here. And these are just some of the pass-throughs on some of the sketches we've been working with here. Just getting started, and the first run at it here, and then I think that's the first, nope, this is an architectural. This is kind of like a cityscape piece, a floating architectural piece. But again, I just want to wrap it up here today by letting you know that we got, again, because of time constraints on my end here, I'm very sorry for the duration here. I've got to move on here very quickly. The next few moments, expecting some calls coming in. But I wanted to get this stream in today to show you the rest of the development, for example, on the GT40, which is, again, is over here. Those of you who are interested, that's the final piece, for example, of the GT40. We're there. Eventually, one of these days, I'd like to get to the place where we start to take the same approach and do a nice big full sketch like this and just do some real subtle little things digitally into a process on my iPad to get things done. So these are the things that I think are exciting that are coming. I'm looking forward to working with you. And again, I thank you so much for joining forces with me here today. And the reason let me switch back to this digital stuff, the reason I brought this in is to inform you that, yeah, a lot of practice time coming along here. I've been looking at some things here, all expecting, for example, in time to come, to begin the purpose of the day's stream to finish up the GT40, and also to show you, for example, I've been doing some practice work on 3 new programs that are part of this pad process. And I'm going to start doing some transfer work. Here's the physical sketch. Here's maybe a variation in theme in the digital side. So, and I'm going to open that up to a lot of subject matter as well. So I hope you've had a little bit of an input here today to kind of help you along the way. And to those of you tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in so far. If I've done some things right here today, and you like that GT40, and by the way, that GT40 print, I got the permission from my client, or the commission individual. We're going to go ahead and have this reproduced and develop it into a print series and put that up on my store at drcontrast.com. I have a store at the website that'll deal with a lot of print work and some of the things I've done over the years, and so far it's been really interesting. We've got a lot of neat things coming to add to that. So this will become available as a print in time to come, and we'll keep you posted on that. And last but not least, I just want to let you know how much I really appreciate the fact that when it's all said and done, so much of it depends on what you have been kind enough to listen to and to work with me on. It's just been a real treat to have you guys come together here and work with me. So much appreciated. And again, if I've done something right here today, please tell me. If I've done something wrong, said something wrong, please tell me. I want to be informed and keep you posted, and I want you to be as sharp as a tack when it comes to working with me in terms of being transparent. And above all else, my company battle cry has always been honesty at all costs. And I just want to be really forthright and letting you know that I'm really interested in developing a skill set for you, and you, whatever you're learning from me, I want to learn from you as well. So please take a moment and visit my website at drcontrast.com. You'll find a whole series of lessons there. We're going to add to that. I'm hopefully by the middle of the month or the end of the month, I'm going to add an intermediate series on 5 or 6 lessons on basic transportation design. And hopefully in that lesson series, we're going to start transferring some of the things we've done today. For example, physical sketch, digital sketch. So all that's coming together. So we've got some great plans here. We're looking forward to working with all of you. And last but not least, please, if you know of anybody who's interested in learning how to work with certain sketch rendering skills or drawing skills, please direct them to my website at drcontrast.com. And if you have any information that, for example, and to contact me at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com about subject matter, I'm more than welcome to respond in that kind. And above all else, I've got to wrap it up here very quickly. And above all else, I always end the stream with this statement, because I think it's so true, and it means an awful lot to me, as much as you mean to me. And it's simply this: always, never, ever forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. I hope you have a great day, and thank you very much. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 2:30, from 2:30 to 3:30, and we'll start doing some additional things. I want to do maybe a couple of some really hot stuff, some different subject matter. So take care, gang. All the very best, and thank you. Bye-bye now.